Welcome back to Explain 2 of 18.3, Writing General Trigonometric Functions. So here they're going to give us a graph, so we don't have to graph it, which is nice. We do have to give an equation. They at least tell us that it's a cosine function, which means it's going to have a y value that starts at any number that's not 0. Okay? So just keep that in mind. First thing we're going to do is figure out what our amplitude is, which is how high it goes. So looking at this, it's going to kind of go that high. It's our max value. And how low, which is our min value. Okay, max and min. All right, so here it goes as high as 1 for our max value. And here it goes as low as -5. Let's go ahead and work this out to figure out what our amplitude is. It's going to be our max minus our min divided by 2, because it's halfway, right? So what's 1 minus a -5? Positive 6, right? So that'd be over 2. What's 6 divided by 2? 3. So we already found our a value, and yes, I did kind of write down so you know what it'll look like, what our cosine function will look like. We have to find our a value, our h value, and our k value. And I'll kind of explain why I didn't give really much space to our 1 over b value in just a moment. But we found our a value. Let's go ahead and plug that in. Our midline, which you'll notice if I kind of count down 3 down from our high point, that's 1, 2, 3. Our midline, which I'm going to draw in a different color, here. I'll try and draw my midline as straight as possible. It's somewhere there, right? So let's go ahead and write that in. Our midline's halfway down, which is about -2. That means our k value is -2. So we've almost finished filling in all the parts, and it didn't seem too difficult. For our period, as you can see here, remember it goes from, as far as how it goes from starting position back down. So here, I could start from here and go backwards, or start here and go forwards, either way. But it looks like it's starting here at -5. And let's see how long that takes. So either way, to ending point, so from about 0, let me go ahead and highlight that for to 2 pi seems to be our period, because it goes from down low, goes up, and comes back down. So it's about 2 pi. So our period's about 2 pi. So if our period's about 2 pi, remember we can figure this out by figuring out 2 pi times b equals our period. In this case, our period's about 2 pi. So let's go ahead and solve that out. What's the opposite of multiplying? Dividing. So that means our b value is, well, what's 2 pi divided by 2 pi? 1, right? Now you'll notice I did not write room for that, and you'll see why in just a moment. So if I actually plugged in, let's say 1, so if I wanted to put in cosine 1 over 1, because that was my b value that we found, what's 1 divided by 1? 1, right? Whenever we learned how to write stuff, do we really need to put that 1 there? Or can't we just write cosine x minus our h value? You probably just write cosine parentheses x minus our h value. So just so you know why that's not there, because yeah, doesn't need to be 1 divided by 1. Now if it was a number, like let's say I did get cosine of 1 over 2, or I don't know, cosine 1 over 3, then I would put a space value for that there. But since 1 divided by 1 just got us 1, doesn't really need to be there. So just so you know why. Alright, last but not least, we're going to find our h value, which is the last part for our cosine equation. So for my h value, which is the last thing I got to find, right? I want you to notice something. For a cosine function, not only is it going to start at a number that's not 0, usually our cosine functions will start at a high point, right? So whenever we see a cosine function, let's say that's my y value, my x value. I know this is not the best picture, but usually my cosine function will start at a high point, at a max value. Here you'll notice it starts at a low point. So really, my starting points are actually going to be right here, which I'll draw in a different color, so that way you can kind of distinguish. High value, or actual starting point, is actually right here. Because that's usually where cosine starts, just in case you forgot. That's where usually cosine starts. It starts at a maximum on the y-axis. In this case, because it didn't, it kind of shifted over about, well, not just pi, but it shifted over negative pi, right? So that would be minus, because we're going to write that here, minus negative pi. All right. So we can leave it like this. That's totally fine. We can also write it in its more simplified form of 3 cosine x plus pi minus 2. So that could be our function there. Let's go ahead and go on to part B. So this one, it says it is a tangent, and they do give us at least our midline and our halfway points, as it says here. So we're going to go ahead and identify some of those. We're going to go ahead and identify some of those right now. So first things first, you'll notice here that we have a middle, and it goes through a value of about 1. So that'll be my midline. That'll be my k value. Okay, so I can already kind of put that in there. It's going to be a k value of 1. All right, let's go on to the next part where they're having us find the period. So from we see here that this pretty much goes on repeat. This graph repeats not only before, but after. And notice how it takes about this much time in pi to get from the starting position back down and on repeat. So it starts at 0, goes all the way to 2 pi. So they wrote that for us. Just in case you forgot, I'm just going to review this part really fast. Remember, for tangent, which is different from a cosine, so cosine and sine, just so you know. For our period, they'll always use 2 pi times b equals our period. So just keep that in mind. For tangent, however, because it does look different, our equation to find our period for how long it goes on repeat would be still timesing by b, but we're going to do by pi. So with that being said, think about it this way. I know what my period is, right? I know my period is 2 pi. I know I'm going to be multiplying by b, now that I remember that I'm going to be multiplying by pi, just so you know. And keep this in your notes, by the way, write it down if you haven't already, okay? All right, let's solve for b. What's the opposite of multiplying? Dividing, right? So that cancels out. That'll cancel out. And what's b equal to? 2. All right. So just keep that in mind. Yes. That'll be b equals 2. Yay. So we got our k value. We got our b value. Now we're going to figure out the next part. So I just wanted to keep this in mind. It says the halfway points lie blank units above and below the midline. So here's our middle, right? Notice how it goes from the middle, which is at 1, to a high point of about 4, to a low point of about -2. So what would be the distance, if you had to count that up, what would be the distance between 1 and 4? Just like, what's the distance between 1 and -2? So take some time, count. I believe you can do this. Try it out. And you'll notice that our halfway point lies about 1, 2, 3, about 3 units above and below the midline. So the graph is vertically stretched or shrunk. So think about this. Remember, if it's a whole number, if it's a fraction or a decimal, then it'll go the other way around. Since 3 is a whole number, it'll be stretched by a factor of 3. Okay. The next thing it says, because the graph is falling from left to right. So remember, most tangent graphs, just as a recall, because I know this was a couple of units ago, it's usually going to go like this. And it's going to go on repeat, right? That's usually what tangent looks like. Now, because it's going instead the other way around, from left to right, that means my a value is going to be negative. So that means my a value is not only 3, but it's also going to be a negative. So this would be an a value that's positive, whereas this one would be an a value that's negative. So just keep that in mind, okay? A value negative, a value positive. All right, so we're almost done. We're almost there, guys. I promise. All right, the next thing they're asking you to do is a cycle of a graph crosses the midline at x equals pi instead of x equals 0. So you'll notice the midline, right? There's the middle. That's what they mean by midline. Crosses at an x value of pi instead of 0, because that's what it usually does on a regular tangent graph. Just in case you forgot, if you don't believe me, go ahead and use the decimals calculator. It'll graph it for you. So that means it shifted over from 0 to about, sorry about that, to about pi. So it shifted over about that much. That means that it shifted over to the right about that much. Okay, so our h value is going to be pi. So let's go ahead and fill in some values just in case you forgot. Remember, this is our a value, our essentially b value, or 1 over our b value, our x minus h value. Now we already found 1, so that's why that's already there. Our b value was 2, so that'd be 1 over 2. Our a value was negative 3, and our h value was about pi. Okay, just like it says here, stop here, do the problem in your packet. If you need to, you can look back at all these notes that we took for finding tangent and cosine. Okay, and I'll see you here back for the next video for explain 3.